What's good, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Over Quota. Please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review if you haven't already. This episode, like the couple of others I think that you've heard lately, is sponsored by 180-Degree Selling. Bigger quotas, larger sales, and longer sales cycles require selling differently to get different results. Do a 180. Go to 180degreeselling.com to download your free playbook. And like always, I'm also, the J. David Group is sponsoring this podcast. My company helps high-growth software companies recruit top software sales leaders and salespeople. So go to the jdavidgroup.com/hiring to learn more, or go to the jdavidgroup.com/looking if you're looking for your next big challenge. Now, my guest today is Kelly Mark. She's a sales leadership expert and strategist with over 25 years of experience selling and managing successful sales teams, focusing on the pain points organizations face as the pace of technology continues to grow and rapidly change. Kelly, welcome to Over Quota.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me, Jay.
Don't mind, share with us the trajectory of your career. And I know that you were with one organization for quite a while, and I'd like to get into that a little bit.
Sure. So, like a lot of people that delve into sales, I started off years ago as an individual contributor and running, essentially being the CEO of my own business, selling unified communication services. And from there, it evolved into running a small team of very strategic sellers in the enterprise space, and that had grown over time into dabbling with the mid-market space and running a region and territory for the West Coast. And then that evolved into delving into an area where I was unfamiliar, and that was really running a sales team of what we call cross-sellers that were responsible for working with existing customers, whether it was an SMB company or a large enterprise. And we were ultimately coming into those customers and learning about the technologies they were currently consuming and how could we really build a strategy alongside those customers to get them into a crawl, walk, run approach to transforming how they were leveraging technology, whether it was moving from on-premise to the cloud, whether it was taking old archaic technologies and bringing them into more modern solutions. And in many ways, we had to work on a short and long-term strategy around that. And so my team was really focused on being the subject matter experts in working with those customers. So I've really dabbled into owning large strategic relationships, selling net new business to new logos in the mid-market space, and then really working on strategies for our large, enterprise customers.
What skill sets did you need to acquire, or did you find needed to be strengthened when you moved from SMB to mid-market to enterprise? And then how were you, as you moved into management, able to coach those into your people as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the key skill sets when you're going from net new logo in small organizations to working an enterprise account is it's less of a turn and burn, meaning you're still strategic when you're selling into those small accounts. When you're focusing on large enterprises, the decision-making process, there's usually a larger group of individuals making those decisions. The decisions usually take longer. They usually have a longer, strategic trajectory because there's so many locations, and it's a much vaster project typically. So it's the way you look at those accounts. You have to be much more strategic. As far as skill sets go with reps, on my team, we've really had to look at understanding the companies and customers really clearly. Because the truth is a lot of customers or a lot of businesses out there provide the same technologies. If I'm going to just focus on ripping and replacing or switching from one technology or the other, a lot of different people can do that. But when you really are engaged in understanding those customers, listening to their investor relations calls, looking at their 10K reports, really knowing the trends in their business, not only does that initially build a trust level where we really ultimately have a seat at the table, it allows us to get more creative in our thinking and our innovation on how we tailor the right solutions for those customers. So I think that's a really critical skill set. I think the second one would be having a growth mindset. So really knowing that it's okay, we're going to fail, or we may get detoured into different directions based on where the customer is, but to continue to grow, be innovative, and not give up. That mindset has to be there to really, I think, be successful in that space.
Was there, and you also said that, there's the new logo side of the business and then the growth side. Were there skills there that needed to be honed differently and sharpened differently when you're going from that just hunting for new business and then building relationships and growing existing accounts? Tell me a little bit about that.
That's a great question. Yes. When you're going after net new business, the nice thing is that you're coming in fresh with a brand new perspective. You're educating, you're consulting, you're learning about a prospect for the first time. So you're starting on a clean slate. I think that it's not easier, it's definitely more challenging because that prospect has no experience. So you really do have to focus on building trust. I think when you're looking at growth, revenue growth in the existing enterprise space, you have to showcase that you understand their business. You're bringing the analytics and the information to the table and how they're currently consuming the technologies with you today. So with QBRs as an example, it's really important to make sure that you're highlighting the trends that you see in their business. You're talking about ways to improve efficiencies and effectiveness, and you're educating them on what's going on in the industry with technology and how to create a transformation strategy. So it's continuing to bring value and trust with those current customers. I think that's the real difference. It's going from educating and consulting someone new and obtaining that new business. And so the skill sets around that, you have to be a really good listener. You have to be really good at data gathering, at understanding and ensuring. Don't make assumptions. Do your homework, but really knowing your customer and building those relationships are key when you're owning that long-term business.
You mentioned QBR. If you're sitting down with one of your reps, or how do you coach that when you say strategic, creative, right, being value added to your customers, right? What does that look like from a coaching and development standpoint?
Well, I think it's how to look at the data that we have available at our fingertips with AI coming into the market and more detailed portals and analytics from leveraging a lot of these technologies. I think it's developing the sales reps to look for certain things to make sure they seek to understand exactly how our customers are consuming the technology, because if we understand that really clearly, then we're able to say and give recommendations based on what they may want to do to improve those, that effectiveness. So I think it's seeking to understand exactly how they're consuming it. When I look at a successful QBR, I think about how we're showcasing what we understand the company's, strategic initiatives, what those look like, number one, first and foremost. I already mentioned IR calls, 10K reports. That's really going to allow them to open up if they know we've done our homework. The second is really reviewing their usage and trends. How are they leveraging the technology, as I mentioned, and recommendations on how they can do it better. And then I think the third is what trends are happening in the market around the technology itself, and and talking through roadmap and things that are coming in the market that could potentially provide a bigger ROI for those customers, especially when we're looking now at these different verticals, right? We're looking at different verticals. We're in a place of COVID where there are ways that they can be doing things in a different fashion that I think they can maximize how they leverage the technology.
What percentage of your prospects slash customers, during COVID and all this, would you say, or just even companies in general, I guess now, were digitally ready, I guess, right? Where they had the right technology in order to absorb this kind of shelter in place and pandemic? I mean, is it a small percent, large percent? Is it 50-50? Give me your assessment of that.
I would say a low percentage. I can't give you a specific percentage, but I would say it's low. The good news is we were able to really scale very quickly with various technologies that we have to allow, our customers and some prospects to jump in and make quick, nimble, scalable changes so that they could leverage it. Now, various organizations also weren't prepared for the capacity concerns, right? There's various technologies out in the market when you think about UCaaS or Unified Communications as a Service. So I think we were able to quickly scale. I think there's also a huge opportunity, though, and I think this is eye-opening for a lot of organizations, whether it's retail or financial or high-tech or medical, where companies have had to take a step back, where they're so accustomed to people working in an office environment. Now they've got to be able to provide technologies like voice services or contact center services, where they need to be able to scale and connect and have the same experience no matter where you are in the world, no matter what device you're on, needing to really have the ability to communicate. And that could be internally within your own company. That could be with your customers, your partners, your peers. So that's been eye-opening. And I think a big element of that is really looking at a lot of the customers out there or prospects or companies that still have a lot of on-premise infrastructure that are connected to office locations, now taking a look back to say, hey, I may not be ready to go 100% to the cloud, but I better be prepared to maybe have a hybrid approach so that it's easier and you can maximize those results.
What were some of the challenges that you've seen during this from a selling perspective? Were there any deficiencies, perhaps maybe in your sales process or within the team that needed to be fortified, I guess, during this? And were there any strengths that you had coming into this that you were glad to have had them in order to navigate through all this?
Yeah. So I think selling to a brand new customer during COVID for almost any industry has been a little bit more challenging. Decisions being put on hold so that they can ensure that they're putting first things first and prioritizing, keeping their company together. So I think that's been a little challenging, and you have to really come in and solve some critical business issues in order to obtain brand new business when you're in the middle of a pandemic or any type of crisis. I think the value of where we've been able to come in is when there is a specific issue, like they need to expand their footprint globally, and moving to the cloud is a really easy, nimble way to do that, especially because you can scale up and scale down depending on what kind of consumption you need. The other component is it's really brought to the forefront how technology is being leveraged. So much of what we do, I shouldn't say so much, there's a big portion of what we do it's been commoditized. It's what's the best deal. Give me the best deal and I'll bring that, I'll bring you the business. And I think now companies are looking at where are we going to maximize our ROI and what's going to be the best fit for our organization, because now more than ever before, virtual communications is key in our business. So I do think it's allowed us a seat at the table for more opportunities, and it has sped up the process of getting companies over to a more modern experience when it comes to unified communication.
You mentioned if you're selling to new companies, it's critical to solve those, I guess, critical issues, I guess, if you will, right? That goes back to, I think, what you were saying a bit earlier in terms of being strategic, looking at the IRs and 10Ks. Would that give your sales reps and you some insight into what's critical and what's not critical? Or is it, and is it, in addition to that, is it all about asking the right questions during the interaction in the sales process to find out what is critical?
You hit it right on the head. I think it's looking at what's available at your fingertips, like the 10Ks, the IR, LinkedIn. It's looking at their vertical. Retail right now is a good example of changing the dynamic of online shopping, as an example. It's completely transformed. Look at Amazon. I mean, what they've been able to do during COVID. So I think it's digging in and with information and more information than we've ever had. I think it's asking the right questions, really looking at the vertical and understanding what is really going on in the market. To your point, it's also ensuring that you're asking all the right questions, open-ended questions, getting engagement from that company, whether it's a customer or prospect. Because I do think that can make or break a sales cycle. I think the reps that are really, really good are amazing listeners, and they ask a lot of questions. The ones that jump, they see an opportunity, they may ask just a couple, and they see an opportunity and they jump too early. I think that can backfire. So I do think being a really good listener and asking those questions is key in creating the right solution for your, prospect or customer.
How do you coach that particular behavior, right? And it's just always fascinating to me when we talk about soft skills like listening and, asking the right questions and those types of things. When you're sitting down one-on-one, or maybe it's in a group setting, how do you, coach that? And then how do you reinforce that? And I'm assuming the answer is tough, of course, right? Which is why nobody's actually mastered it.
Right. I think it's important to look at 3 different areas with each of your reps, or if you've got a sales director that you're coaching them to work with their reps on. And that's, what are their habits? What process are they following? And what are their skill sets? So if you really break those down, habits, they could be good habits. They could be habits that may not be working for them. Could be time management, as an example, as a habit. Process is, what type of sales call process are they following? Are they skipping steps? Do they need coaching? I can address that if you want to dig in a little bit more there. And then skill sets. Do they need more development on listening skills? Do they need more technology development? Do they, is time management, something that they need to really hone in on and brush up? So if I break those 3 things down, really dig in to how they work and look for the things that they're doing really well and praise them for that, and look for things that maybe they can improve upon, whether that's through role plays, whether it's breaking it down into bite-sized goals for them to implement in their business. And then to reinforce it, I think it's through team meetings and it's through one-on-ones where you really, you have an ongoing list of things that they can do to improve. The one thing that I have a strong belief in is you can train on development. It's the tenacity, the dedication, the hard work, the growth mindset. Those are the things that you have to really, those are the things that are innate in people, that if they've got those skills coming in, you can tweak and change the trajectory for their success, I really believe.
So yeah, if they're deficient in a particular part of the sales process, or they're lacking in a skill set that might be listening, let's just say, or really asking the right questions, if they have that mindset, the right mindset with tenacity and growth and those types of things, you're able to coach those. Yep, I get that. Okay. Okay. So how do you then, if you're building a team, right? And you can look at the teams that you've managed and the people that you've managed over the years, and then think about as you're bringing on new hires, how do you go about screening for these behaviors, right? When you talk about tenacity, growth mindset, those types of things, like what are you listening for, looking for evidence of that says, okay, this person has the soft skills that are needed, and then I can coach and teach them the rest of the stuff, the rest of the business?
That's a great question. I think there's a couple things. Number one, a resume is good, but to me, it's a piece of paper on educating me on the history of what they've done. So I don't take too much stock in it, but we can talk about that piece in a moment if you'd like. Mm-hmm. When I'm interviewing someone, I am looking for how they've overcome challenges in their prior business. I'm looking, what have they done to overcome challenge? If they've entered really challenging times or situations, what is their mindset? Do they push and move forward and say, okay, I learned these 3 things, now I'm going to move on? I think it's showcasing their level of commitment and dedication around that, but also everyone fails. How do they handle failure? And really, how hungry are they? How successful have they been? I can get a sense of that if I'm asking a lot of those key questions.
What about adaptability, right? This is, we talked about companies needing to move to the right technologies in order to adapt from an individual perspective and running their own, to your point, right? Running the CEO of your own business, so to speak, as an individual contributor. Should reps be doing at their own desk in their own world to help differentiate themselves, to help really, to your point earlier, get creative so that they can get conversations started in a way where may be more commoditized? What should they be doing?
It goes back to asking the right questions. Where, how are they, what are some of the key things going on in their business? So putting the technology totally aside, because it's easy to go into a conversation and to ask what's working with the technology that you're leveraging and what's not, and try and tailor the technology gaps. Mm-hmm. But if you can really ask the right questions to hopefully C-level and down to the director level, and you understand what's going on in their business. What are their initiatives? What needs to happen for them to achieve their goals? And getting more into the business applications, that's a differentiator. Because then if you can paint a picture and story tell a way that you can achieve those goals, and it just so happens to be by implementing some new technologies, that, I believe, is where you get the hook, right, with those prospects or customers. So it's really talking about their business and less about the technology and tailoring it around that.
I heard you mention in another podcast, social selling, the importance of that and how that plays a role. Tell me why that is so important, and how any advice for people that are thinking of doing that, how they should leverage it and leverage it effectively.
So I think with social selling and leveraging, like LinkedIn as an example, I think now LinkedIn has gone from being almost like an online resume tool, in a sense, to how do you create your personal brand. And creating your personal brand is bringing information to the table for your network that is educational. Because in today's world, our buyers are smarter than ever before. They can go Google anything and find information. They can find technology information, pricing information. But if we can proactively bring relevant content into our social selling and target specific individuals, whether they're a current customer, whether they're not, that really starts the evolution process of differentiating yourself in that space, because we all have, a lot of us have large networks. or even if you don't, there's so much content coming at us so rapidly. It's really important to understand your network, connect with the right people, and bring that content to the table. Just like much of what we're doing today, podcasts can be really informational and valuable for people out there. And so I think social selling has become more critical than ever before. I mean, in the old days, I used to dial off of index cards and cold call 120 calls a day. Now you do have to be more strategic and really, focus on leveraging those social outlets to get a seat at the table, especially for those brand new prospects that you may not have a relationship with. The other thing is also, if you're, using partners out there, partners are also really important in a lot of what we do, at least in our space. And so ensuring that you're connecting and bringing value together there for your prospects and customers is also key. So I think it's who you're connected to and really how you're coming together to bring value out there. Oop, I can't hear your audio.
All right, guys, sorry. For some reason, Kelly lost my mic disappeared and she couldn't hear me. So we had to pause the recording. Now we're going to continue here and try to flow back into the conversation. So sorry about that, everybody. So what I was about to mention is that I noticed on your own LinkedIn profile that you, and this is the first I've seen it, where you publicly praised members of your team for just certain things. And the first thing I thought of, and I know you're a sports fan, is I remember Phil Jackson of the great Chicago Bulls, right? The Last Dance everybody watched, and how back then he did such a great job as a coach of motivating, oftentimes through the media and through just not necessarily talking to them, obviously talking to them directly, but putting things out there in the media. And sometimes it was even to position themselves for the referees a little bit, right? And I noticed that you've done that on multiple occasions, which is praising your team. Tell me a little bit about that. When you started doing it, why you started doing it, and what the effect was overall.
Yeah, no, I love that question because I do think it's so important for our teams and our reps and people we work with, whether they're on our team or peers or partners, to hear when they're doing a good job and why they're doing a good job. We used to ask years ago, are you more recognition focused or money focused? And I remember answering money when I was really young. I was just starting off in sales. I was like, money, money, money. What I've really seen over the last several years is people really want to be recognized. In a world where we're hustling, we're moving fast, it's like almost like parenting. You want to hear praise, and you have to hear praise so much more than what you need to be doing differently or working on in order for it to really stick. So I think it allows for not only a positive working culture, it also starts to open up the trust between you and your reps, as an example. So building trust and recognition, I think, go hand in hand. And when those two things are there, you can get to the meat of a problem, I think, a lot faster. You have more of an open dialogue. I think that showcasing when somebody is doing a good job is really valuable in the business. And it creates, like I said, that positive culture, but people want to follow you. People want to be a part of something. And it doesn't mean that you cannot provide constructive criticism either. But it's really important to acknowledge when people are doing a good job. And I just don't think it's happening enough. And I have seen a real positive outcome with it.
I would imagine too that when you do take that approach of let's say praising, and even more so publicly praising that when you do take when you do give constructive feedback, that they're more open to listening to that and more willing to take action, right? I mean, obviously there's anecdotal, I guess, not necessarily data driven, but just sort of my own observation, I suppose.
Absolutely. You get the more of the ultimate outcome that you're looking for. And it goes for everyone, right? It goes for, here's what, I'm a big fan of here's what worked. Here's 2 things that you did a great job. Here are 2 things that we really need to improve, or you really need to improve. And here's why. And here's where I think it'll take you. People are yearning for direction and feedback. They really are. When you don't get it and you're uncertain about your job, where you stand, I think that's a really hard position to be in. I know I've been in that position before, and it's uncomfortable because even though maybe you're really a solid employee and you're really successful, you still want to know how to continue to grow, especially when I talk about that growth mindset that I've talked about here today. That helps in that fashion, right? Where can I continue to put my effort and energy to get better results or to continue to evolve in my position or role?
You mentioned that when you first started out, when asked that question, if you're motivated by money or recognition, you said money, as most of us, I would imagine, have said. Who were some of your mentors early on to help you and guide you through your career? Because I would imagine that you probably haven't been able to get to your point without having some mentors to bring you along, help you along.
Absolutely. I've had a few. I've been in a couple of different industries. UCAS has been the lengthiest element of my career at over 25 years. When I look at a mentor and the value of a mentor, it's someone that you've got trust built, that you look up to, that they have attributes that you want to be more like or you want to learn from, and they're also somebody that's going to challenge you. And I've always talked to my teams about finding a key mentor, whether that's internally within the organization you're currently working or externally. One of the biggest mentors I've had, her name's Anna Centrella-Thayer, and when I first started off in the UCAS space years ago, she sat me down and she was a friend of a friend, which is great, right? Connecting with your network. And she believed in me without any experience in the industry. She believed in me, and she hired me within a 30 to 45-minute meeting. I continued to learn from her over the years in ways not just professionally, but personally, that expanded how I viewed a lot of the world, honestly. And so she really had a huge positive impact on my life and believed in me and was my cheerleader and fan, but challenged me at the same time. And I always thought that when I met her that I would want to be that for someone else. It was a perfect example of somebody coming into the sales industry, or someone young coming in, or somebody that hasn't had that before. So that would be probably one of my biggest mentors. Besides, I could talk about my mom too, but in the professional space, I would say Anna.
Absolutely. Okay. Fantastic. Well, you've been doing a fantastic job of guiding us and mentoring us here on the Overquota podcast today. I don't know if you saw this. I had sent another email to you right before we got on with just an update, and I have what's called the Rapid Fire 5 questions. Did you happen to see those?
Uh-huh.
Okay, fantastic. And it's basically just 5 questions that I ask, you answer, to just give the audience a little bit more insight into you. Sure. And to get to know you a little bit more. All right, so here we go, the Rapid Fire 5. What are you most excited about right now, either personally or professionally?
The most excited is probably entering into a new venture professionally. I'm not sure where or how, well, I know how, but I'm not sure where it'll be, but that's probably one of the most exciting things that I'm looking forward to, is kind of transitioning into something new.
That's always exciting. Newness is always
Yes.
exciting.
Yeah.
What activity do you miss most since the whole shelter in place started? I know you're in Colorado. I don't know what phase you're in, but what do you miss the most when, if we ever go back to normal, what would it be?
Traveling and seeing my closest family and friends more frequently, because I grew up in California, so I've got family there, got friends there. I love traveling. Those are the two that I miss the most.
What keeps you motivated?
Ooh, my kids, my goals, wanting to always continue to grow as a human being and experience new things and get uncomfortable. Those are things that motivate me. But my kids are probably the biggest motivators.
Do you have this is kind of a veering off because I'm just curious, do you have a big goal right now that you can share with us, that maybe even a BHAG, right? One of those big, hairy, audacious goals that's hanging out there in front of you that you care to share? If not, that's fine.
Yeah, I always have a vision board up, and I really do believe in manifesting what you want. As far as a really big goal, I think where I'm focused the most right now is transitioning into a new career. So that's, to me, really big because it's been so long. I've been at the same company for over 20 years. So that's probably my biggest goal. I'm trying to move up in my tennis league. I've got some big travel goals, and I've got some big financial goals. I've got two teenage kids that are just a year apart, so college is imminent here, coming up really soon. So I think those are probably the biggest right now.
Okay. How about a piece of advice or a tool that you use to help you stay productive?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think for me, to stay productive, I think time management is such a critical habit to staying productive. Writing things down, having a plan, creating a space, whether you're writing it. I've got a physical thing I use right now, but I, leverage things online as well. I think that because with your big goals, you've got big goals, then you've got to break them down to smaller goals. And then, you break them down annually, quarterly, monthly, weekly, daily. And the only way to really achieve those goals is if you break it down into bite-sized pieces, especially in the world we live in. For me, I'm trying to live a balanced life with work and children and me time and friend time. There's just so many elements to life. So I think time management is probably one of the biggest as far as staying productive.
Going back to the vision board for a moment, is it a vision? Is it literally like a poster board with pictures of stuff that you've cut out from magazines or pictures that you've taken? Okay, it is. Okay, I wasn't sure if you were using some sort of technology to. Okay. I've
heard there's technologies out there. For me, I have mine up in my room, but it's an actual board. It's magazines. It's sent, words, pictures, etc. And I look at it, every day, every single day.
I recently brought my wife into my business, and the first thing we did on day one was our vision board. So
nice.
Our separate vision boards, so to speak, and they're in our room too as well. So
that's so neat. Yeah. It really is impactful. I love it. I've been doing it now for 12 years, I think. Mm-hmm. So.
Yep, that's our first right there. My first, her first. So
good.
It's fun. Okay, and the last question, which should be the easiest. What's the best way for people to connect with you, just to say thank you, get additional advice or thoughts, maybe something I didn't ask?
Sure. I think on LinkedIn would be the best. Kelly Mark is my handle. And that is the easiest way to connect with me. I'm pretty active every single day on LinkedIn, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions or collaborate. One of the things that I've been doing is really reaching out to friends or people through my network and providing any insights as companies and industries are evolving quickly right now during COVID, giving any type of consulting that is needed. But yeah, I'm available at any time over LinkedIn.
And I guess one last question, as I'm sitting here, as we're going through this, I'm thinking now that the listeners are like, okay, Kelly Mark, how do I find her? Which Kelly Mark is she? Can we say the name of the company that you're transitioning out of, or should we just leave that off?
Sure, yeah, so I'm transitioning. I worked at Intrado. That's how you would find me on LinkedIn. I'm transitioning out of Intrado, and it's INTRADO, and that would be the easiest way through LinkedIn. Thank you. That's a good question to make sure they find the right person.
That's right. Awesome. Okay, good. Yeah, I wasn't sure, but I appreciate that. All right, Kelly Mark, thank you for going over quota.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I hope people out there find this valuable, and thank you for the opportunity.
Goodbye, everybody. I'm cueing the music.